During the recession, charitable giving has taken a major hit. Bucking that trend, however, is a website that was founded 2 years ago right here in Chicago. GiveForward.org provides personal fundraising pages for people who want to raise money for friends or others in need. The website has raised more than $1 million in worldwide donations. Here to tell us about it are co-founders Desiree Vargas and Ethan Austin. Welcome both to Chicago tonight. First of all, give me just a real quick summary on how it works.
So we give people personal fundraising pages, and it's kind of like creating a Facebook page or a LinkedIn profile page. You put in your name of your fundraiser, picture, a little description of what you're raising money for, and then you can share your URL with anyone in the world to donate directly with a credit card or a debit card. And
Ethan, on your website you have different cases, different projects or proposals for where people are saying, you know, here's a case involving, you know, my son, here's a case involving my sister or a friend. So it's for, how does a person decide who to give to?
Well, usually the way it works is friends and family will set up a fundraiser for a friend or a family member who's sick, and then they'll email it out to their own friends, and then it will get onto Facebook sometimes, and word spreads really quickly. It will go viral. A lot of people around the world will then end up giving.
But is it mainly friends, is it mainly personal connections that contribute to a particular case, or does somebody just go to your website and just start looking through it with no personal connection to the individual effort and decide to contribute?
Well, in the beginning, when we were small, it was mostly just friends and family and extended networks. But now that we've gotten bigger, people have come back to the site to donate to projects repeatedly because it feels good to give to people that you know are going to personally benefit from.
Ethan, give me some examples of some of the cases that have been helped through your website.
So we just have a fundraiser on the site right now for a man who's in his 30s. He has 4 kids, all under 12, and he has stage 4 renal cancer. And he needed to come to the United States from Holland. His wife's from the United States to get treatment. And they raised about $90,000 in the last month alone, just from friends and family. And then it spread, like I said before, on Facebook. They got a Facebook group that had about 4,000 people from around the world. And really quickly, they raised $10,000 in a week, and then $25,000 in 2 weeks, and then it really just snowballed from there.
Desiree, other stories come to mind of particular cases that are memorable?
Yeah, there was one story in particular. A man was passing away from cancer, and his friends and family raised money for his kids after he passed away. And before he passed, 200 of his friends from 20 years of working at Johnson & Johnson left messages and words of encouragement, and together raised $22,000 for their kids after he passed, and it was really impressive.
What's been your reaction? Because this website has not been in existence very long, a year and a half or so?
Yep.
You started it in 2008. Why do you think it has taken off so much, Ethan?
Well, I think there's a real need to connect with people. I think people have always been giving to their friends and family in these situations. They've been having spaghetti dinners, they've been doing community events, and what this does, it doesn't change anything. It's still people giving to people. It just makes it so much easier to reach out to hundreds or thousands of people across the country. You can just reach to those out in your own geographic community. You can reach out to everyone around the world.
Desiree, was it tough to get this thing going, or did it sort of take off on its own, or how would you describe the growth process?
Yeah, I mean, any startup takes a little while to get going, so we started in August of 2008, and before that we kind of came up with the idea together, but in January and kind of March. And the first few months were slow, but we had a really amazing story of 2 sisters from Chicago. One was raising enough money to give her sister her kidney, and when that story got into the USA Today, it's really when we started to see a lot more medical fundraisers on the site, and we really started to see some momentum.
Yeah, I spent some time on your website today, and that story in particular seems to have gotten a lot of attention. And it's what, people just make a connection with families going through a tough time. Ethan, is that what you think the
I think
hook
it is. I think, you know, like we said before, it goes onto Facebook sometimes, and people will connect because they've been in that same situation themselves. Even sometimes it's a stranger, they don't know this person, but they know a friend of a friend of a friend who knew this person, and it connects with them because, all right, maybe my dad needed a liver transplant, or maybe my mom had breast cancer. So people see the need and they feel the connection. So,
well, let's talk about your personal connection with the motivation. How did you get the idea?
Well, Desiree really came up with the idea, and I joined Desiree a little bit later. I wanted to do something, you know, similar to what Desiree was starting, but my father passed away from cancer when I was younger, so I've always been involved with cancer organizations, and I had a friend who told me to train for a marathon while I was in law school, and I'm not a runner by any stretch of the word, but I ended up raising money for St. Jude Children's.
Is that the marathon where you dressed as a banana?
That is not the marathon where I dressed as a banana.
But you did run a marathon dressed as a banana as part of a fundraising effort.
That is for an organization here in Chicago called Immerman Angels. It's a one-on-one cancer support organization.
And here we have you in your banana gear.
Yep,
it's a good thing you didn't slip and fall.
Yeah, I got that one a lot during the race.
I can
Trust
imagine.
me, yeah, I did.
Especially in the rain, yeah.
Well,
but the idea
how did you get the idea, Desiree, then? Tell me about that.
I was working at the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City.
What is that?
It funds entrepreneurship programs and youth development. And so the entrepreneurship idea was always in the back of my head, but the idea for Give Forward came from post-Katrina. My friends and I were talking about how we would rather give directly to a family rebuilding than to give to a big nonprofit, because as small-scale donors, we really couldn't feel the impact of our gifts. And I started to think about all the different types of fundraising efforts that there are, spaghetti dinners or the little change boxes you see in a convenience store. And I thought, why isn't there an online tool for the people that are doing all of this informal fundraising around the world and the country?
How do you know if somebody isn't trying to rip somebody off? You know, what's to stop me from putting a cute picture of a kid who looks sick and say, you know, please help little Johnny. He needs this leukemia treatment, and we don't have insurance and all that business. How do you prevent that?
No, it's a great question. We have several safeguards. One is we ask for character references before anyone can put up a fundraising site. And then we also keep all the money in escrow until the fundraiser closes. So if we do see any fraud, then we can always return the funds. But probably the biggest...
Has that ever happened where you've seen fraud?
No, we've had a few fundraisers flagged, but usually it's a personal issue. It has nothing to do with fraud. But the other big factor is that most people don't come onto the site and donate to a project that hasn't raised any money. And in order for a project to get momentum, you really have to bring your friends and family on board and get the support of your close network. And at that point, people come on you, they hear about it in the news or through friends. So that's when the more random donors come into play. And at that point, it's already been kind of validated by friends and family.
I see. Well, how do the two of you get paid? How does it work? Because, I mean, you just can't do this forever out of the goodness of your hearts.
We have a few revenue streams. One is we take a percentage of transactions. So right now that's still pretty small. It's at 3%. We're going to raise it to 4% just to cover our expenses. But we're also looking to partner with hospitals and healthcare nonprofits that can offer a version of Give Forward within their own websites. And so we'll do that with a licensing fee and then additional percentage.
So it's going up to 4%. Ethan, how does that compare to other organizations that raise money for good causes?
I mean, most of the other organizations that raise money for good causes are for nonprofits, but of those, we're the lowest. It usually ranges from anywhere from 4.75% to 10%. So we're towards the bottom of that range.
So what, 95% of these cases involve people with medical needs. What happens, keeping with our healthcare reform theme, what happens when healthcare reform kicks in? Will there be less of a need for your website?
I don't think so. There are so many expenses that go along with being sick. You think about living expenses while you're undergoing treatment, especially if you're an hourly wage employee, or travel expenses to see a better doctor,
so
or
you think
high deductibles.
So you think the need will continue even with healthcare reform?
We hope it reduces it some. But yeah, I think the need, just because there's so many out-of-pocket expenses.
And a lot of our users on the site have insurance.
Is that right?
Yes.
Ethan, Desiree, thank you both for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And before we go, some viewer feedback. We asked you if the state spends enough on education.